She was forced to choose a man with a sack over his head, as if he were merchandise on sale. But behind this auction stood the sheriff, a man who concealed prisons, violence, and slavery under the guise of law. Widow Clara defied the entire system simply by reaching out to someone everyone considered broken. But just listen to how shocking the turn of this drama was, and why justice, in the end, prevailed. Texas, 1886. On the outskirts of the arid town of Redwater stood a woman in a black dress, too new for a widow and too plain for a rich woman. She held herself straight, but her eyes were full of silence. Clara Mills, 36 years old. She had buried her husband and 2 sons after a cholera outbreak, endured ruin, lost her farm, was left with empty hands and a room above a junk shop. Nothing remained in her but pain and resolve. The crowd by the wooden stage buzzed. This was no cattle market, no trade in tools, this was an auction of living labor. Men in shackles, some captives, others criminals, and sometimes simply those sold to private contractors for debts. No one spoke the word slavery, but everyone knew the smell was the same. Clara hadn't come for entertainment, she had come for protection, for someone who could fix the roof, guard the house from drunken marauders, deter those who looked at her with lustful pity. She didn't need a servant, she needed a man who wouldn't pry into her soul. Next, yelled the overseer, convicted of escape, resistance, murder of a soldier. No papers, just silence. A figure was led from the crowd, a tall man, with a sack over his head and ropes on his hands. He didn't resist, but moved as if he could kill 10 men if he wanted to. Starting at $1. The crowd laughed. 1, even for cattle, they paid more. Clara raised her hand. $1. The laughter died. No one objected. Who would argue over a vagrant in a sack? The man was led to her. He didn't say a word. She didn't flinch. Do you know who you bought, missus? Asked the overseer. No, Clara said, and I don't care. He could be anyone, an Indian, a murderer. Then he'll suit me. Thus began this strange partnership. She didn't remove the sack from his head. He didn't ask. By day, he chopped wood, silently, without requests. At night, he slept in the barn. She left food by the doorstep. He ate. He never stole anything, never came closer than necessary. But she began to notice things. The garden, plowed overnight, the walls repaired, wolf tracks near the house disappeared. Someone tracked and killed it without a sound. The man in the sack did everything, but silently. She thought she had bought strength, but perhaps she had bought a conscience, or something far more frightening. A week passed. One night, Clara woke to a rustle. She saw him. He stood on the porch, without the sack. He had a scarred face, Indian features, eyes black as ash. He looked at her. You didn't ask who I am. Why? She slowly approached. I ask you to like and subscribe to the channel, so you will help me in motivation to make such great stories for you, and I will see that you like them. Enjoy watching, everyone. Because you are a man, that is enough. He looked for a long time, then nodded. My name is John Tejo. My hands are not entirely clean, Mrs. Mills, but I'm not running anymore. She nodded. Then stay. That night they ate at the same table for the first time. He ate silently, neatly, with respect. She watched and thought that perhaps, for the first time in her life, she had done something right. But in town, whispers had already begun. The widow bought a savage. He'll kill her in her sleep. It's not godly. They didn't know that Clara was already dying, not from hands, but from loneliness, and John from shame and another's guilt. And that's where their peace ended. Morning in Redwater began, as always, with dust, the cries of merchants, and the smell of stale grease from the tavern. But in those days, this town lived on rumors. The widow who took in a savage, he's without the sack now. They're together. Gossip grew like weeds after rain. Sheriff Banner didn't like it when order was disrupted, and even more when a woman acted without his knowledge. I built this place, he would repeat, standing at the bar with a glass of whiskey. First the Mexicans rebelled, then the Apaches, now widows, mother **** heirs. The sheriff wasn't a lawman by spirit, he was the one who decided what order was, and Clara with her Indian evoked something far more personal in him than alarm. He had made her offers several times, informal, without rings, with hints and a dirty smirk. She rejected them, silently, with pride. Now he knew she had chosen a criminal with skin the color of earth instead of him, and that stung him more than a gunshot. "You shouldn't go into town," Clara told John in the morning. "They've already seen me. This is different. Strangers are there. Here, you are needed." He remained silent, but Clara felt it. Tension was building in him. He started placing his knife closer to the bed, looked around more often. Even the dog he had tamed wouldn't approach him when he was in such a state. Late that night, there was a knock at the door. "Miss Mills, it's Sheriff Banner. I need to talk." Clara went out. John remained in the shadows behind the door. "We have information that you are harboring a fugitive murderer." "I am harboring no one. I hired a worker. He escaped from army custody. That makes you an accomplice. The auction was public. He was bought." "Really?" Banner sneered. "I think we should check the papers, or perhaps you'll just open the door?" "John isn't here." "Are you quite sure?" Banner's voice became slick. It no longer held a threat, but amusement. He knew he was frightening her, and he enjoyed it. But Clara did not back down. "Leave, Sheriff, and don't return without a warrant." He left, slowly, with a smirk. "You chose death for yourself, darling. Even if not today, it will come." 2 days later, John's dog was found in the backyard. Killed. Shot through with an arrow. Skinned. Whoever did it wasn't just cruel, they sent a signal. John buried the dog with his hands. Clara watched his shoulders tremble. He made no sound. That same night, someone set fire to the barn. They barely managed to put it out. John burned his hands. Clara helped, not uttering a word. When it was all over, she held his palms in hers and saw in his eyes a different kind of flame, fury, not pain. "I'll leave," he said. "No. If I stay, you'll suffer. I have already suffered. And survived. Now it's your turn." And then he kissed her. Not as a lover. As a man who had not been betrayed for the first time. The next day, Banner returned. Not alone. With 2 armed deputies. "You are both under arrest. On suspicion of harboring, conspiracy, and resisting law enforcement." John stepped out. "Let her go. She has nothing to do with this." "Oh, so you're talking now?" The sheriff sneered. "Don't worry. We have a special place for your kind. You want me? Take me. But touch her and you will die." It wasn't a threat. It was a prophecy. But Banner, a man accustomed to no one defying him. He struck Clara with his rifle butt, without waiting for an order. She fell. Blood. And then everything happened quickly. John lunged. Unarmed. Like an animal. A blow. One deputy in the dirt. The second, with a shot leg, Clara snatched a rifle from the window. The sheriff was left alone. With a pistol. "Do you think a savage will defeat the law?" He roared. "I am the law." But John didn't listen. He just walked. Slowly. Not like a man, like retribution. And at that moment, the sheriff fired. Hit. Clara screamed. But John didn't fall. He only collapsed after 10 steps. Right in front of Banner. Looking him in the eyes. "You were wrong," he whispered. "The law is not you." Clara was arrested. John was taken. Or what was left of him. But the story is not over yet. Because, like any true injustice, it was only just beginning. The rain came down that night. That rare downpour that washes away the dust and sins from the streets, if they allow it. But in Redwater, nothing was washed away. It only dug deeper into the ground. Clara was held in solitary confinement. Without explanation. Without a lawyer. With a busted lip and the memory of John falling before Banner. He didn't scream. He didn't fall like a man giving up. He fell like someone who had done everything he had to. She didn't cry. She waited. Meanwhile, rumors surfaced again in town. He killed the sheriff. No, he died himself. He was just her lover. No one spoke of what was true. The town broke a man. And now it was going to erase him, as if he had never existed. But Banner didn't account for one thing. John wasn't just an Indian. His name was known far beyond the county borders. He was born on the reservation, escaped army captivity, survived the slums of El Paso. And some remembered him not as a slave, but as a warrior. And that some were already heading towards Redwater. On the third day after the arrest, 3 riders entered town. An old man with a scarred face. A girl with a tribal necklace. And a man in a leather jacket, looking like a lawyer, but with eyes full of resolve. They stopped at the sheriff's office. "We're looking for John," the man said. "Dead," Banner's deputy grunted. "Then show us the body." "We don't have to." "Then, I'm afraid, you have to do something else," and he pulled out papers. A federal warrant. For investigation of unlawful detention, abuse of power, and violence. "And we are also looking for Mrs. Clara Mills," the lawyer added. "A witness. And possibly a victim." Clara was released. Not immediately. Not with apologies. But she was released. And the first thing she asked was, "Where is he?" "We don't know," the lawyer answered honestly. "He wasn't among the detainees. Neither in prison records, nor in the morgues." "Is he dead?" "Not impossible. But," he glanced at the Indians, "there's one woman who says she can feel his breath." Sheriff Banner was not in town. He had gone to a ranch west of town. According to rumors, to lie low. In truth, to hide. The next day, a gunshot echoed at that very ranch. Servants said Banner was drinking. Yelling. Cursing at the wall. Then he saw something. Then he shot. Himself. But the people in town didn't believe it. They said otherwise. He looked into the eyes of someone who returned from the dead. He thought he killed him, but he didn't. And when he realized, he shot so he wouldn't hear what the one he left to die would say. A day later, a man appeared in the tavern. He limped. With a scar on his shoulder. Spoke little. When Clara entered, he simply stood. "I don't know who you are," the bartender said. "But Mrs. Mills, she's a widow, right?" "No," she replied, looking into John's eyes. "I thought I was. But I was wrong." He didn't smile. Only nodded. But that was his way of smiling. When they were later seen by the burned barn, Clara was holding his hand. He said he was leaving, he had to return to those who waited for him. She said, "Then take me with you." He didn't answer. Only handed her the reins of the second horse. And so the widow and the savage left the town where justice was rare. But where, once, it still prevailed. And the dust no longer seemed so dirty. The road south was deserted. Dusty. Merciless. But widow Clara Mills and John, whose name remained unknown in Redwater, walked it as if each step returned to them not just distance, but what had been taken from them. In the Apache village, they were greeted like the living dead. Women touched John's shoulder, as if they couldn't believe it was him. The elders were silent, because for people like him, it was not customary to speak, it was customary to remember. And the children looked at Clara, the white woman, like a ghost. But no one drove them away. No one asked why she had come. Because, when she walked past, holding his hand, everyone understood, he didn't save her, she saved him. They lived in a cabin they built together, wooden, without windows, with one door. She learned to boil herbs and speak a language that had no words for power and slavery. He learned to hold a spoon with his left hand, his right barely moved after that night. When he smiled for the first time, not with a nod, but genuinely, she cried. And when he said, "You didn't buy me for $1, you bought me back from death," she only replied, "No thanks needed, just live." But Redwater did not forget. Newspapers came out with headlines. Scandal in the county sheriff revealed as imposter and abuser. Victim veteran's widow refused to be silent. Hero or criminal? Who was this man with a sack on his head? Journalists wanted interviews, senators to apologize. But Clara did not answer, John even less so. They were not interested in revenge, only peace. In spring, a boy came to them. The son of that very Eliza, the girl from the shack whom Clara had left bread for. He had walked for 3 days to deliver a letter. "You gave me bread when I thought life was hunger. Now I am a teacher. And I tell the children that not every widow is silent. And not every man with a sack on his head is a slave. Sometimes he is freedom. Thank you. Clara reread the letter aloud. John didn't look away. Do you hear? She whispered. It wasn't us who survived. It was us who made the world a little more alive. He didn't answer, only squeezed her hand. One day, he left in the morning, without words, without a weapon. Returned at sunset, covered in dust, in blood, someone else's. Threw an old thing onto the ground, rotten, rusty. Shackles. The last ones, he said, found them in a cave across the river, where they kept people like me. She silently took them and threw them into the fire. The iron shrieked, as if screaming, but then it fell silent. At sunset, they sat side by side. He rested his head on her lap. Do you think they'll forget? He asked. No, she answered, but maybe they'll forgive. He fell asleep with that answer. And she watched as stars appeared in the sky, and it seemed that each of them belonged to those who were once silent, but now no longer had to be.